We find people that come to raw motivations that don't know how to engage with emotions. They're not sure how to break through that plane because they haven't been allowed to. They don't have permission to. They haven't been in a safe environment to deal with their emotions. So we have to teach them. Your emotions don't matter. Your feelings, inconvenience. You getting emotional, having feelings, starting to cry, starting to actually emote, starting to actually do anything inside the emotional realm, that is going to turn him off. It's going to turn him off. Not in Jonathan's in a sexual way, but it's going to turn him off saying, oh, this person I do not want in my life right now. I do not want to deal with what's going on. You become an inconvenience to the narcissist because of your emotions and your feelings. Now, why is this? Why would this actually be an inconvenience to him? Well, simply, if we break it down, simply because he doesn't care. But underneath that, your emotions are triggering something inside of him. Triggering something inside of him that has not been fixed, worked on, looked at, or healed. And as a result, he doesn't want to deal with it. So when my wife would start crying, there's a moment where she was crying and she was sitting on the couch. And she was crying and sitting on the couch simply because of how I'd shown up. How I'd shown up in a negative way. I'd lied about something. She caught me in it and she was sitting there. She was crying. She was hurt. In that moment, I knew she needs comfort. Like I knew logically, like this person crying, they could use a hug, right? Like it makes sense. Like you see that on TV, you see that in real life. So you're like, oh, this makes logical sense. I knew that in my head. The thing is, I wasn't willing to do it. Now, why? The reason why I wasn't willing to do it was because me walking across the room and sitting down and giving her a hug meant that it validated her emotions. You're like, duh, that's what it's supposed to do. Okay, bear with me. It would validate her emotions, which then in turn would show up that what had just happened was real, which it was, and how I'd hurt her actually was a problem because of who I was. You see, Narcissist always making it about me, right? Making it about himself, coming back to it. So inside of that process, I realized if I go over and give her a hug and validate her emotions and validate the things that just happened, then that shows that I'm not a good guy. That shows that I'm a liar. That shows that I'm abusive. That shows that I'm a cheater. I don't want to admit that. Running from the truth. Running from the reality of who I actually was. So at this point, she doesn't have a chance to be able to experience emotions. She's experiencing some of them on the couch, but she's not going to be validated by them. She's not going to be encouraged by them. Instead, she's left alone, crying on the couch. Now, at this point, I have two choices. I can either run away, walk out, be a coward, leave the house, or I can rage out, be a coward, and try to make sure that I stop her emotions, because that's the piece that's triggering me. I have to stop those emotions. Multiple scenarios happen in our life where I did but either one, or sometimes both, raging out and then running away. The reason why this is happening is because your emotions are triggering something inside the narcissist that he doesn't want to deal with and he doesn't want to be honest with. So he has to either rage out at you or run away. But what this does on the flip side is it leaves you in a place where you are unwilling to experience emotions. You're unwilling to actually step into your feelings. Maybe for you, this might be stepping into your feminine because you have to become an alpha in the relationship simply because of the matter. He's not willing to step up as a man. And so you get to this place where you start to get emotionally stuck. You're not able to process emotions. Why? Because if you do show emotions, you know what's going to happen. You know how it's going to turn back on you, how he's going to rage at you, how he's going to get upset at you, how he's going to make you feel smaller than an ant simply because you showed an emotion. You showed a tear. You showed something that you weren't comfortable with that made him feel accountable. So as a result, he had to come back at you. Yelling, screaming in your face. Simply because he has to shut down your emotions. He has to make sure that you don't feel. Because when you feel, it triggers something inside of him. It makes him start to feel. And he doesn't want to feel. So he has to make sure that you shut up and you just sit on the couch. Do you see this? This happens inside of narcissistic relationships all the time. Because he's not willing to actually deal with your emotions, he has to shut you down. And he always will. Not providing space, not providing a way for you to emote, for you to experience any type of emotion, but you have to just be there. Just sit there. That's it. Now, the hard part is how do you actually heal from this? You could be in the relationship trying to heal, or you could be out of the relationship. In the relationship, you're going to only heal to a certain level. Let's say, for instance, you're only going to heal to 60% out of 100%. You won't get past that because you'll have a ceiling and a cap on your healing that won't let you break through that until you're actually out of the house, disconnected, no contact, whatever it might be. Healing will only get you so far when you're inside the toxic environment. It's like learning how to swim and getting better and better at swimming. But if you're still swimming in the toxic pool, like, it's still toxic. Yeah, you're a better swimmer now, but you're still swimming in toxic sludge. So at the end of the day, is this really how you want to live your life? Now, I'm not saying you have to start off going no contact. Some people need to start healing process now while you're inside the relationship and then slowly move up. This is why we help people go from victim to survivor to thriver, because we have to actually help you build up your confidence, who you actually are. If we don't do that, you just going no contact isn't going to do anything. A lot of times I'll recommend to people to not go no contact first off because they don't have the confidence to keep it up. They don't have the internal resolution and strength to keep it up. So as a result, I'd rather you stay in contact and start working on your healing. Just start investing in you every day at a time because you haven't been able to do that. He hasn't allowed you to do that. And he hasn't allowed you to process emotions. So when we're dealing with emotions, you get to a place where you're emotionally stuck. You're emotionally constipated. Now, think of constipation for a moment. Constipation is when you have so much stuff inside of you and it's just not coming out. Like you've got a lot of shit that gets compacted that you can't get out. And as a result, this is the same thing that happens emotionally. You get every single thing thrown at you. You become the punching bag to the relationship over and over and over again. You're just expected to take it, to actually just integrate the emotions, just feel the feelings and not show anything. So you start to shut down. We find people that come to Raw Motivations that don't know how to engage with emotions. They're not sure how to break through that plane because they haven't been allowed to. They don't have permission to. They haven't been in a safe environment to deal with their emotions. So we have to teach them. Part of the process in teaching might be simply just pulling up an emotion wheel. Because at this point, you might be only able to list off maybe 3 or 4 emotions. Because that's all that's accessible to you in this moment. And that's okay. Part of the process, part of the journey. Is looking at an emotion wheel. You can find these all over the internet. Look up an emotion wheel. Look up a negative emotional wheel because that's typically all the emotions you're going to be feeling. Then looking at it and start to process. What am I actually experiencing in this moment? Taking an emotion wheel and actually starting at the center, figuring out where am I at? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I happy? Finding that initial emotion. Then it has these pie slices inside of the wheel. Do you look, what else resonates? Oh, that's a new word. What's that mean? Oh, that's a word that I haven't thought about. Oh, that's exactly how I feel. And you start picking out different pieces. What this is doing is expanding your emotional piece. It's making you flex emotionally. It's making you flex inside of feelings. And then you get to the place of, okay, how do I process my emotions? How do I process my feelings? There's then walking through this process of the emotions to figure out how am I actually feeling about these emotions? What is actually happening inside of all of these? So people come up with feeling statements. I feel this emotion because this is happening. And they walk through this and they realize, oh, when I do this, it gives me more depth. It gives me more information about what I'm actually feeling, what I'm actually experiencing. But then what do I do with that? Understand that all of your emotions and your feelings are all guiding you towards something. Every time you feel emotion, every time you get a trigger, every time you get this visceral response that happens inside of you, it's all leading you to something. It's leading you to what is underneath because we're just peeling off layer by layer by layer of the onion of your life, trying to get underneath the surface to understand what is actually going on underneath. What are you actually believing in the moment? What are the thoughts that are actually going through your head? This is what makes up how you live. What do I mean by that? I want you to consider the concept of stories. Okay, not just the stories of listening to stories or viewing stories, but the stories of your own life. You see, your life is made up of the story that you tell yourself. You've been interacting with life based on your vision, based on your perception. If I looked at your life, I'm going to have a different story from my vantage point. The narcissist in your life, he's going to look at your life, he's going to have a different story from his vantage point, right? Everybody has different perspectives. You have to understand that the story, the narrative that you're telling yourself is running your life. Think about that for a moment. The narrative that you're telling yourself is running your life. So if you think that you're not good enough, guess what? You're not. and you never will be. Simply because that is the story that you're telling yourself. I think, therefore I am, right? Like if you think you can't, you can't. Because it's all about what you're telling yourself. The hard part is you've had the narcissist in your life press so many stories on you that you start to manufacture your own, you start to believe your own, and you start to get to a place that you can't emotionally process because of the stories that have been placed upon you and the stories you believe. Well, he left me, so that means I'm worthless. No, that's a story that you made up. Well, this happened, so this is my story. This is the piece that we have to get you to understand. You're believing a lot of stories in your life that are completely untrue, that are completely false. Ones that he's placed upon you, and then ones you started to make up yourself. Every single thing that holds back the emotion, that holds back the feelings, is all based on stories. Well, I can't show my emotions because it's not safe. I can't show my emotions because he's going to rage out. Some of those are real. Yes, 100%. But then they still don't happen when you get out of the relationship. Why? Because there's different stories that are actually making you change and modify what you're doing. So we have to be able to help you change your thought process. If we don't change the thought process, you stay stuck. If we don't change the internal narrative that you're telling yourself, then the story you're telling yourself will become your reality, will become your destiny. You don't think you look good enough, then you won't look good enough. In your mindset, your thought process, your story, that will make you go to a place that you start to degrade yourself, devalue yourself, look negatively on yourself. And as a result, you don't do the things that you want to do. You have a lack of confidence. You have a lack of growth and lack of transformation in your life. Do you see this here? Like the story is so important. How you think, how you talk, the narrative that you're telling yourself matters. And if we don't change that, you stay emotionally constipated forever. You don't actually process, work through the things that are holding you back so you can actually rise to be who you're called to be. If I can help with this, go to rawmotivationscoaching.com. I'd love to help you move forward in the healing process, showing how I help liberate women from victim to survivor to thriver, learning how to grow and develop into who they're called to be.